Hello and welcome to Life with Jane. So, what has been happening this week? Well, I'm exhausted at the moment now. I know it's only Monday, but I went and bought some duck's back, cuprinol duck's back fence paint. And you know the old saying of water off a duck's back? Well, evidently this paint has like a wax on it, so when it goes onto the fence, it will dry and will almost have like a waterproof coating, and it means that when it rains, it just beads off rather than soaks into the wood. Well, not a year ago, probably 6 months ago. My sons came and helped. They did it. I watched and made tea. They replaced my fence for me. My old fence I'd had for 10 years. It should have lasted longer, but I get quite a lot of wind coming in from the direction with the fence, which means that the fence gets a lot of sun one side, it gets a lot of shade the other side, it gets the rain and the wind. Basically, it doesn't last more than 10 years. I've been in my house for 30 years, and this is my third fence, so yes, about 10 years. So it was put up in sort of the autumn, late summertime, and I thought, well, there's no point in me painting it before the winter because it's a new fence and they treat them anyway. Really disappointed with this fence, actually. The fence panels weren't of the standard that I wanted, and in fact my son actually took some of them back on the top of his van and replaced them because they were so shoddy. And yet this company had turned around and said, local company, and had been very, we'll look after you, don't worry, and all of those sorts of things. And you trust people and you think, well, give them the benefit of the doubt. And I thought, well, better have them than have, a massive, great big, large company that really doesn't have the customer care, etc. And they said, we'll deliver them direct and we'll bring them into the back garden for you ready, and all of those sorts of things. And I thought, well, that sounds really good. And my eldest son turned round and said, Mum, don't just go for somebody who, because they sound nice and because they're giving you great customer care, go because of the quality of the fencing. And I was like, well, I don't know the difference between fencing. The stuff they've got out in the yard that they showed me looked really good and had extra battens and things like that on it. So I thought, well, that looks good. Well, what turned up, you wouldn't believe it. It was covered in like white mould. It was so shoddy that my next door neighbour actually came round and said, you haven't accepted that, have you? And I said, well, they turned round and said that it would wash off. And in fact, I phoned through to their centre, and their manager said, that's all right, the lads will wash it off for you. And so basically these young lads spent an hour washing all this mould off of this fence, saying that it would be all right. And I thought, it doesn't look very good, but who am I to know? So anyway, my eldest son, when he came round, he was like, don't worry about the mould, Mum. This fence, it's so many mils out this side, so many mils out that side. It's not, being done. Now, I don't work in mils. I work in inches and half inches, a quarter of an inches, but it wasn't of a good standard. So anyway, I had 14 6-foot by 6-foot fence panels because I need 14 fence panels to go all the way down my garden. I've got a very long garden, but a very thin garden. As some of you have seen my garden, I've got a beautiful garden. I do love my garden. But so anyway, my son had already put 10 years ago for the other fence, had put these concrete posts in, so that it meant with sort of slotty things. So it means all you do with the fence is you just pick it up way over the 6 foot and then just literally slot it in, and then your fence is where it should be, which is fantastic. So it meant that they just had to slot the panels in, and they did it relatively quickly and it was fine. However, we've now just had the winter and we're obviously in the beginning of April, the sun's out, and I thought, right, I'm going to go and get this cuprinol duck's back because it is supposed to be really good. And I thought, I'm not that happy with the quality of the fence panels, and I don't think that they will last. If they last 5 years, I think I might be lucky this time, and I'm just so disappointed. But there you go, one of those things, no point worrying about it. So anyway, I got this paint, and oh my goodness, it's really thick. It doesn't, you know, when you use creosote and things like that, or the normal fence panel, it's like a watery thing and it goes everywhere, and you have to wear gloves and you have to wear glasses and goodness knows what else, because, well, when I do it, it goes everywhere. This is as thick as a thick thing. So fantastic. I was able to paint. The only thing was that it took me 1 hour per panel. So I've only done the first 8. Now, as you've seen in my garden, and you'll get to see it all on Wednesday, which is one of my things. I'm going to show you the garden on Wednesday and what I've done. So I chose forest oak, which is a deep brown, a very, very dark brown. In fact, when the sun's not on it, it's a real dark brown. When the sun's on it, it's a nice sort of oaky brown, but absolutely perfect. So it took me, as I say, 1 hour to do one fence panel. So I have done, so far, I've done half of the garden, which is 7.5 panels, because I have my greenhouse, which sort of separates half the garden. And then, so that would be the 8, that would be the 9 and the 10. And then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. The other 7 are the other half of the garden, or about that. I need to count them up, but I know that I did half of them. I spent 4 hours or 3.5, 4 hours on the Saturday after I picked them up. So probably 3.5 hours. And then on the Sunday, I spent just over 4 hours painting, which is quite long enough. Now I do take a break and have a drink and you know, make sure that I'm not just doing it non-stop, because it's quite hard work. And I do it with a paintbrush, because I could do it with a sprayer, but I wouldn't trust myself with a sprayer. And I have these concrete posts and I don't want to get them covered in paint. So yes, so I've done that, and that was my Sunday. So today I've been in the garden just sort of tidying up and doing some weeding and a bit of, not planting, but I showed you last week the absolutely beautiful dahlias that one of my sons gave me for Mother's Day, and they are just lovely. And I thought, well, the weather's beautiful, and dahlias are they are corms. They're not bulbs, they're corms, which basically is sort of like a clustery root type thing. But they will come up year after year, fingers crossed. So anyway, I thought, right, I'm going to put them out in the garden, and I've got a large pot. I've got lots of pots, as you know, but I've got a large blue square pot, which I really love. And it's one of those lovely sort of cobalty blue colours. And so I've put it in there, and I think it will be lovely. I'm hoping, because it's still quite cold in the evening, that it's not going to be too much of a shock for it. I don't think it will be. I think it'll be all right. I've bedded it in well with some compost into the pot, so fingers crossed that'll be all right. I've also turned around and thought, right, I have to paint my decking every year. And the reason I have to paint it every year is because my little dog races down the garden every time I open the door, will chase away the magpies and the pigeons and the never would catch them in a million years, but races down the garden when they're sitting in the garden going like, this is my garden, you can't be in my garden, bark, 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 bark. So she launches herself like a racing pad. So she'll race across the decking, launch herself into the garden, and then off she goes. So it means that her claws, where she's running on the decking, it scratches away the last year's paint. So every year I have to do it. And also one area is always more in the shade, and it gets quite sort of mossy, and then the paint isn't as good. So anyway, I've got to do that. Whether I'll do it this week or not, it's supposed to be beautiful weather this week. Next week, I'm not sure, but I know that this week it's supposed to be good, which means that I should get more opportunities to get out in the garden, and I love spending time in the garden. I really do. And as I say, Wednesday I will show you what I'm doing in the garden. But I've got so much to do. It's one of those things that once you start in the garden, I'm not mowing the lawn at the moment because it hasn't rained for a week, maybe 10 days. It's been very, very dry. It hasn't exactly been sweltering hot or anything. It's been nice and warm, but it hasn't been, there's been a northeasterly wind, so it hasn't been, it's been 16, 17 degrees centigrade, so not too bad, but certainly not hot, hot. I mean, I've got a jumper on and I've been out in the garden all day. But it means that I don't, as I've always said, I am on a water meter, so I don't water my garden with a hose. I water my greenhouse and I water my plants. My greenhouse, I'm using my water butt because there's lots of water in there. And for the plants that are in pots, they dry out quite quickly. So my willow and things like that, I've got those in pots because I don't want them to grow too tall and I don't want the roots to sort of, go creeping everywhere. So I water those with a watering can, just from the tap. But I won't use the hose on the lawn because with a water meter, it would just be ridiculous and it's a waste of water. So I don't mow the lawn short. As you know, I've done a couple of top cuts, which have just taken the top off it. But I'm not going to mow it again at the moment because I don't want it to dry out too much. Because if it's got enough of a top, it will then keep, quite well. So anyway, that's the lawn. So Wednesday I will give you a tour of the garden and go through all of the things. Obviously it's Easter time, so I might have to do a voiceover. I've got obviously lovely neighbours and things, but one of them's got a young lad and so, children and noise and stuff. I don't really want to be like talking and have all of that coming over if it does. So I don't know what the video is going to be like on Wednesday. I might have to do a voiceover, but there we go. I tend to not like doing voiceovers because I like the garden noises. I like the birds and I like the sound of the pond. And oh, that's another thing that I did. I cleaned the pond out. In my pond, I had like a big terracotta bowl, and that was on a stand that had 3 other little bowls that came down, and so the water would run from one bowl to the other to the other to the big bowl and then into the pond. And I've had that in my pond for 10 years, maybe 15 years. I don't know, I forget with time. I've been in my house 30 years, so it's over 10 years and it's probably less than 20 years, but somewhere in between. And obviously being terracotta, each winter the frost gets to it a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So the very top pot was literally, there wasn't any pot really left at all. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to take the little sort of spouty thing that has the water in, like a little hose. I'm going to take that out, cut that, sort it all out, and I'm just going to have it just going into the little bowl. Well, the biggest of the bowls, which is like a sort of a round dish. And I've done that. So I cleaned it all out, and then I cleaned the sides of the pond and everything out. As you know, my pond is quite an extraordinary thing. Many years ago, so probably 28 years ago, I had an old cast iron bath. When I bought my house, I had an old cast iron bath in the bathroom, which really wasn't very good, and yes, I could have repainted it and all of those things, but I thought, you know what, no, I'll have a modern bath put in there, and so that's what I did. And the old bath, the boys were quite young then, young teenagers, and so we put it onto a duvet cover and slid it round and down the stairs, because it was too heavy to actually carry, being cast iron, and then slid it out. And I said, do you know what? I think it would make a really good pond, because obviously it's never going to disintegrate. You don't need to buy a pond liner. It's upcycling to upcycle's sake. And so anyway, the boys were like, well, yeah, we can dig a hole, Mum. We'll dig the pond. So they dug the hole for me. We put the bath in, and it's been a pond ever since. And I have newts in there. It's a complete wildlife pond, so I would never have fish or anything like that, goldfish or koi or any of those things. It's a natural pond. So I have toads and I have frogs. I have newts, as I say, that come in every year. And of course, newts are quite protected now. So they're lovely to see. And yeah, I absolutely love it. So, but because it's a cast iron bath and you've got sort of the white round it, it builds up all sorts of algae type residue and stuff. So anyway, I gave it a good scrub out, good clean, picked out all the moss out of the pond, and it's looking absolutely lovely. So again, you will see that on Wednesday. Foodie Friday, let's go on to Foodie Friday. So this Friday, I'm making a really easy store cupboard recipe. It's fish cakes. It's not fish cakes where you are, which I absolutely love, and I do make them, where you buy your own fish and you flake it and you cook it and then you make some beautiful fish cakes, etc. No, this is a quick and easy store cupboard fish cakes. So it's using fish that you are likely to have in your store cupboard, and it is using I'm saying a secret ingredient. It's not a secret ingredient. Well, it is a secret ingredient. It's an ingredient that, if any of you remember watching all of my food hauls, I remember saying, oh, I've bought this and I've got an idea for it. Well, if you remember what that was, that's what that idea is, and that's what I'm using as a secret ingredient, which is something which is really delicious and tasty, but also is a great way of padding out your ingredients to make them go further. So with me, it doesn't matter. I make enough and I freeze the rest. And I think I made 9 fish cakes, and they're big size fish cakes. And so anyway, I put a lot in the freezer. But if you're a family, 9 fish cakes would feed, I don't know, 4 people, 5 people, 6 people, depending how many fish cakes you want. Depending whether you do them with vegetables and things like that, depending whether you do them with a salad. It's down to you. Anyway, it's a simple, easy recipe using store cupboard ingredients. So I hope you'll enjoy that. I've prattled on enough. I hope you enjoy my chatting away to you. I love my Mondays because I literally just sit in the chair and talk to you. And as I say, Wednesday's going to be another garden one because it's lovely weather and I don't know how long it'll last, and we might not be able to get out in the garden for a few weeks if we have rain and it's not particularly pleasant. So let's make the most of it. What do they say? Let's make hay while the sun shines. Yes, although it's not hay time, but you know what I mean. So as always, please stay safe and well. Please be kind and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye.